Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast series powered by citiesabc.com and openbusinesscouncil.org. Once again, we are here to continue profiling the biggest personalities in the world of business and technology and making sure that we create actually a better utopian vision. And the opportunities, of course, are bigger than ever still in history, but it's about the way we look at visions. And that's why we highlight this program to profile personalities, founders, entrepreneurs, and the likes of authors and personalities that are actually trying to come up with projects that are about resilience, persistence, and innovation, but as well a lot of work and a lot of passion for what they do. And that's the case of my special guest today. I have Seamus Rocca, that it's quite a personality in the financial world. And of course, he's been leading an organization that is Xapo Bank that I want actually to profile for a long time. So Seamus Rocca is a financial expert and thought leader, a corporate leader with over 2 decades of experience working in the financial services sector. He has been working with big organizations as a chartered accountant and international companies, including Arthur Andersen, Credit Suisse, Macquarie Group, and Standard Chartered Bank at senior executive levels, with a focus on finance, treasury, and emerging markets. Seamus is a qualified chartered accountant, and he studied accounting and finance in the University of Leeds, and he also attended Saïd Business School at the University of Oxford, where he studied executive leadership. He's also a member of the ECAEW, a world-leading professional membership organization that trains, develops, and supports over 150,000 chartered accounts personalities worldwide. And in terms of the work of Seamus, has been working close with organizations like UK Prudential Regulatory Authority, and was a certified material risk taker under the UK PRA rules of his capacity as head of liquidity at his former role at Standard Chartered Bank. And in terms of Xapo Bank, Seamus has been working for the last 5 years, taking the role of CEO in 2021, where he's responsible for overseeing the operations and strategical direction of the bank. So I'll stop here. We could go for a lot of more things, but it's a pleasure to have you here. And welcome to our series.
Thank you very much for having me, Dinis.
So Seamus, let's start with a bit of your background. So you have a fantastic background, and you start conventional with the biggest financial and auditing companies, and then you moved to the crypto world, the dark side or green side or blue side, whatever we call it. But how was your background, a bit of your background, and as well, how did you arrive at the stage where you are? Because it's quite an impressive CV.
Sure. I grew up in Gibraltar in the 70s and 80s. And the border with Spain was closed, and options to pursue careers here locally were limited. If you wanted to go to university, you had to do really well at school to get a scholarship. So that was my way forward. So I was a hard worker early on, just to be able to make sure that I could get into university and pursue a career. And if I'm perfectly honest, when I was 17, 18, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do as a career, but I knew that I wanted to see the world. I wanted to travel, having grown up in a place that was so small with the border to the world closed. I remember seeing the world through National Geographic magazines. The internet didn't exist at the time. And so I needed, a career and a job that would allow me to travel and see the world. So that's what I did. I decided that, become a lawyer or anything on that regard in financial services, you're quite sort of limited to where you might want to work because you've got different laws in different countries, but numbers are numbers. So I thought if I become an accountant, I'll be able to work anywhere in the world. So that's what drove me to becoming a chartered accountant and working with Arthur Andersen. And the moment I qualified, I decided to put that to good use. I was offered a job by Credit Suisse, originally in London, and then they moved me to New York to work in the Latin American desk, and that's when I started getting exposure to emerging markets, and of course working in New York. It was a very cosmopolitan place. So, after that, a lot of my career was really focused on, carrying that story of working in big financial institutions, focusing on emerging markets. Why? Because emerging markets are growth markets, and any growth story is always an interesting story. You know, how countries are going to develop, economies are going to develop. So working in financial services in emerging markets was always, you know, a big motivation for me to see how the world would evolve and operate. You know, I did that for a long time at senior levels, and then I decided that, you know, I'd had enough of the big glass building corporate lifestyle, and I wanted to sort of try my skills in fintech. I felt that working in fintech, I could have more of an impact. You know, sometimes being an employee of a big organization, you know, you might be very senior, but it's very difficult and challenging to have an impact because it's hundreds of thousands of people in some of them, quite bureaucratic, slow to move, not very nimble. And I would look at some of the things that fintechs could do and how quickly they operated and how they would be innovating and using leveraging technology. And I thought, you know, I don't know how, I don't know where, but I want to be a part of that. So I left my job, and I didn't have a job to go to. Because otherwise I felt if I didn't throw myself in the deep end, I'd never do it. So I started looking around, and that's when I bumped into Wences through mutual friends. We were introduced. Wences Casares he was the CEO and founder of Xapo. He's still, of course, the founder. He's now the chairman. But when I met him, he was a CEO looking for a CFO. So you know, from that perspective, I you know, was very honest with him. He was very clear that he wanted to, you know, build a bank that also had adopted Bitcoin regulation somehow, and that's how we were going to make sure that Bitcoin was taken seriously, that it would become more mainstream through more regulation rather than less regulation. So Xapo was already a custodian at the time. And I said, Wences, I don't know very much about Bitcoin. You know, Wences is the Bitcoin expert. And I wasn't. I knew a lot about banking, but and a fair bit about emerging markets, but not much about Bitcoin. And I remember to this day, he said, you know, leave that bit to me. I just needed to be good at banking and be a good CFO. And that's how my journey with Xapo started. And you know, the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow, that's very impressive, and our life gives this turn. So before we go to Xapo, which I have a lot of questions, but let's start first from that part of starting in Gibraltar, because most of people probably know Gibraltar from the films, from probably one of the James Bonds and a couple of other things. So tell us a bit about that background, because you are probably one of the few people that really was born there, besides being an offshore or stuff like that. And of course, how was that experience of? I always liked the culture and how that changes. Like you said, you wanted to see the world, but it's a beautiful place as well. I had the privilege to go to Gibraltar a couple of times, and it's really beautiful. And of course, it's very well located in south of France, so you have the best of two worlds. But tell us a bit about that background of growing there, and then of course going international and going to big organizations. If you want to touch a bit that part.
Sure. You know, you mentioned the James Bond movie. Clearly, we're showing our age, because I remember seeing it being filmed. I was still at school when it was being filmed. The movie was called The Living Daylights, and the opening scene was filmed here. Yeah, I think, look, for me, what it developed was this notion of hard work. I was never the smartest guy in the room at school by a long stretch, but I was certainly going to be the hardest working. And I think that you know, work ethic is in my DNA. You know, once you acquire it at a young age, you don't know any other way to operate other than just throwing yourself into things and working really hard. So I think that shaped me a little bit, because for me the option of staying here was just not an option. So the harder I worked at school, the more guaranteed I was of getting a scholarship and sort of achieving my ambitions. So I think, you know, being from Gibraltar sort of, you know, shaped me, but it's changed a lot. You know, when I grew up, the border with Spain was closed. So imagine it's only 3 square miles. It's tiny. So it felt a little bit, even though it had a very strong sense of community and things that now that I'm a bit older, I value a lot more. When you're young, when you're 17, 18, and it gets a bit boring and you want more. What's funny is that, 30 years after I left, I've come back. And I've come back for many of the reasons that you've mentioned. It's in the Mediterranean, the south of Spain, speaks English, good financial center. I went to Morocco for the weekend a couple of weeks back. It's 20 minutes away. And then a few weekends ago, I went to Sevilla, which is 2 hours north. I've got Malaga Airport nearby, and I can fly to pretty much anywhere in Europe, and it's only an hour to get to the airport, which is probably less than what it would take me to get to Gatwick when I lived in London. So it's a great part of the world to live in. And it so happens that Xapo is headquartered here. Gibraltar was one of the first places that brought in, crypto asset regulation, and we wanted to be regulated. And of course, once we realized that, well, actually, Gibraltar being part of Europe, you've got EBA quality CRD4 regulation on banking. We went through the journey of getting an e-money license, and then we upgraded that e-money license to a bank. And then side by side, we've got this vast entity. So we have two operating companies. One does the crypto bit, and then the bank is a bank. So, I like a lot of companies in the crypto space that say that they are a crypto bank, but they're really an exchange or a custodian. We are actually a bank and a crypto company that gets mashed together and offered to the customer in one product.
So let's look at the history of Xapo. If you can give us, for the people that don't know so much, because of course you guys don't have the marketing of Coinbase of others, but in terms, like you said, in terms of infrastructure and the regulatory part, probably you are as strong or even more. So and of course, especially if you look at the likes of Dinis and so forth. So tell us how it works. The Xapo wallet and the Xapo bank, and as well a bit of history for people that don't know so much.
Sure. So, well, I'll give you a sense of what it is first, and then I'll give you a sense of how we got there. So essentially, it's a bank account, right? So you've got an app, and we are a savings proposition. So if you've got, you essentially have a dollar bank account that is deposit guaranteed up to $100,000 that pays you 4.1%. And it has a debit card linked to it that pays you 1.1% cash back. So it's really a savings proposition. The added bit to it is we don't just do it for dollars, we also do it for Bitcoin. So we're a Bitcoin custodian, but we want to do what banks do for Bitcoin. So we're learning how to generate yield out of Bitcoin in a very safe and secure manner, and figuring out how to do it for our customers so that we can pay them that interest back. So when you mash that together, you essentially have a dollar bank account that you can open up from anywhere in the world that earns you 4% deposit guaranteed. And you also have a Bitcoin account that works like a bank account for Bitcoin, that is safe, earns you yield responsibly, and you can access it money in and out on the dollar side. You can use stable coins, you can send us crypto, and you have your debit card with you. So that's essentially what the product is. So clearly, we're not an exchange. You don't come to Xapo to trade 500 different pairs of coins. You don't come to Xapo to sort of, take a punt on, some new token or something that, is best played by exchanges and other people in the space. For us, we're much more of a safe, secure place to keep your savings and keep your wealth. That's kind of what our value proposition is. How we got there is an interesting story in and of itself. When Wences set up Xapo, it started in 2013. We started as a Bitcoin custodian, a Bitcoin wallet and a Bitcoin custodian. And a lot of our early customers, we had some retail customers, but also big institutional investors. And we had our first and only ever round of funding, which was $40 million back in 2014. And we used half of it to build the vault, the custody business, the wallet, which is how the business was born. And the other half, we thought, well, if we're going to custody people's Bitcoin, we need to have Bitcoin as capital. Because if your capital is in dollars and the price of Bitcoin you believe is going to go up, and of course we do, then from that perspective, you go, well, we need to have some of our capital in Bitcoin. So we bought $20 million worth of Bitcoin in 2014 when the price of Bitcoin was $100. So we've got a holdings company. It's got a large Bitcoin reserve. And that Bitcoin reserve, of course, being at the holding level, allows us to have a very highly capitalized bank and a very highly capitalized VASP, which is the crypto company. So then in terms of those two entities, that degree of capitalization and the holding company and the operating companies means that we're incredibly well capitalized. If you think about the bank that we've built, we don't do any lending. We don't do fractional reserve banking. So essentially all of your money we have on deposit. So there's no risk of a liquidity run. And it's all invested in money markets and short-term treasuries, less than 3 months. So from that perspective, you don't have to worry about bank runs or what happened to Silicon Valley Bank or other banks in the US recently. Your money is as safe as it could possibly be in any institution. And then we do pretty much the same on the Bitcoin side. We've got the best custody vault security around. We pretty much invented cold storage and custody back in 2014. And to this day, we pride ourselves in our security. And when you put all those two things together in the app, what you can do is very seamlessly move between one and the other. In the background, you've got two operating entities within the companies because the bank is not allowed to touch Bitcoin and the VASP is not allowed to touch fiat. They're two different services. But it comes together in the app so that when you join Xapo, you are basically a customer of both companies. And we just make the experience seamless and simple for you. Because, for crypto to go mainstream, not everybody wants to go on MetaMask or have their own coin custody at home in some device that might get lost. People trust financial institutions to take care of the money, and they have done so for many years. And with Bitcoin, it's a little bit the same. The use case of Bitcoin is obviously the fact that it's sovereign, and therefore no government can control it. The fact that it's finite, there's only 21 million that are ever going to be minted. The security of the database and the hash rate. So there's very clear positives to Bitcoin in and of itself. But for it to go mainstream, people need to trust it. And for it to trust it, the people that have the touch points with it need to be regulated. And that's why we've done this combination of a bank and a crypto company, but that really behaves and operates like a bank, which is what we are, as opposed to an exchange where maybe you're just taking, a gamble on price that might go up or down. So what is the use case of that? Where do we think that would resonate the most? Because I think, we talk a lot in crypto about, use cases and what is the genuine use case of crypto. Well, if you think about Bitcoin and US dollars, the US dollar is still the currency of the world. And in my view, and I did a blog about this recently, it will continue to be so for the foreseeable future. Well, to some degree, blockchain and particular Bitcoin has created this new opportunity for a store of value. And yes, the price is volatile. But I would say two things to that. First is that it's still early days for Bitcoin. So there's a long way to go in terms of the adoption and price stability and what have you. But the other thing is that, well, that's all relative to your own local currency. If you live in the US, you might think that the price of Bitcoin is volatile. If you live in Venezuela, you'd much rather have Bitcoin than have local currency. So it's just two extremes. In the middle, there's a lot of countries in the world where having this idea of a store of value that is digital, where you can transfer that value with the click of a button on blockchain, but that you can trust through a trusted party like a Xapo that is regulated and highly capitalized, has value. Where does that resonate the most? In countries like Argentina, Lebanon, Nigeria, countries that have got, hyperinflation, big economical issues, and it gives people a choice of, there's this offshore bank out there where you have the choice to be in control of your own money. You can do that digitally through Bitcoin, and you can also do it by keeping funds in dollars if you're worried about price stability of Bitcoin. And where we can innovate is in how you bridge those two things. So we recently launched the ability to receive and send stable coins, USDC and Tether in particular. And what we're essentially doing there is, we're not, when you're at Xapo and you send us a stable coin, you're not holding USDC anymore. We make it simple for you, and we convert that into a deposit guaranteed bank account that is earning 4% in a bank that doesn't do fractional reserve banking. So we think that that has, a lot of appeal, particularly for people who either live in emerging markets or for people who have already made that leap and believe in Bitcoin and the kind of innovations that we're bringing to financial services, which we think are the future.
Thank you. It's a very great explanation and very sharp in the sense of explaining all the complexity in a very simple way. So for people, I think, like you said, one of the biggest challenges right now is definitely, first of all, the simplicity of the UI UX of using these platforms, which is still, like you said, MetaMask, even for people, for anyone, it's quite a complex platform. And the same with NFTs, the same with anything. It's really, you have to be almost like a software developer to make it. Yeah. And as well, if you do a mistake, you can lose substantial money. And as well, there's a huge, even for people like me and for other people, I am a bit more than others because I created a lot of tokens myself. One of the challenges I've been facing is definitely there's a huge challenge in terms of understanding the regulatory, first of all, what is right, what is wrong. And second, it creates a fear. And then there's a big challenge that you guys have been tackling in a very intelligent way. So let's touch this part, because I think you are probably the best person to answer on this, is how can we actually create this trust on digital assets and digital currencies? Because in the end of the day, it's mainstream. Wall Street is using it, central banks are using it. And although there's a bit of hypocrisy, because sometimes they pretend they're not, but that is a much bigger thing we cannot solve. But it definitely is the case of big banks that say, no, you cannot touch this, but at the same time, they're doing it themselves. But forget that. Let's look purely from a user perspective, because a lot of countries, you mentioned emerging markets, cryptocurrencies are very important for them, much more than for Western world. And for instance, Nigeria right now, although it banned cryptocurrencies, is the #1 trader on this in the world. So how do you see that you can actually bridge, and you're working with regulators, you come from one of the major banks in the world, Standard Chartered, and you as well at one of the biggest auditing companies. How can we actually make this, first of all, this myth disappear and find a bridge between the innovation that comes out of digital currencies and the conventional fintech and banking? Because in the end of the day, digital currencies or any of this innovation that you guys are doing is fintech. And yeah, it's precisely a great way to conserve wealth, to create wealth, and to help a lot of people. And that is, I think, the thing that you should be talking, not all the elephants in the room. So yeah, I would like to have your opinion on that.
Sure. Well, I think, if you look at incentives, that can sometimes give you a sense of where people's approach is coming from. So my experience of banks is very similar to what we've just described. I spend a lot of time talking to financial institutions and trying to work with them or whatever. And on the one hand, they'll tell you, no, we don't do crypto, but then they all have digital teams that are looking at blockchain, CBDC, yada, yada. So there's a recognition that the technology, blockchain technology, is innovative and is here to stay. But I think the challenge that they have is that all fintech up until now has been based on existing traditional banking payment rails. So if you think about, most traditional fintechs that don't touch crypto, you've got FedWire in the US and faster payments in the UK, but that's really linked to the big banks that touch central banks. And then fintechs come along or payment companies come along and work with those big banks, and they provide payment services to other fintechs. And then those fintechs come along and maybe they work with card issuers and they get a really nice app, package it together. But all of it is the foundation is still the same. The foundation goes back to the big banks and the central bank. If you look at Bitcoin, which is completely separate to that, that is scary. That's scary to most people because they look at that and go, well, actually, that is not within the landscape that we know and understand. And then if you think about blockchain in general, it's completely different technology, right? So how do we merge and mesh those two things together? I think there's a couple of fundamental things that need to happen. Number one is, if people are scared of technology and they're not embracing it, then you're never going to innovate anything. So, how can big financial institutions learn a little bit more about, blockchain analytics and some of the work that can be done there? And how does that help remove the fear factor that perhaps existed around crypto 5 years ago? So I've seen a huge shift in that space where, big financial institutions used to be scared of Bitcoin, but now they all understand that some of the blockchain analytics give them much better insights into what happens with the flow of funds than they could ever do with any traditional form of AML and compliance type controls. So that is a key theme. I think if financial institutions could better understand how it works and embrace it, then that would be a good starter. And the second thing is, there's too much fear, I think, about the fact that some of this new technology might, cut into a slice of their pie. But I think for me, that's a bit short-sighted, because if you're working with the industry and you become an integral part of the industry and you work with the serious players in the industry, then the pie just gets bigger. So everybody wins. So I think that at the moment there's this sort of, and don't get me wrong, I see this in banks, but I also see it in the crypto community, particularly with exchanges. Exchanges are very obsessed with market share. So from that perspective, they're in competition because it's all about very thin margins and price, right? So market share is incredibly important. So they're all in competition with one another. And then you got the banks that look at crypto as a form of, competition that could drive a huge dent into their industry. That's not going to lead to this desire to collaborate or work together, right? And then you got this mantra of, the exchanges point the fingers at bank and go, oh, look at the bank collapses. And then the banks are now looking at, oh, look what happened to FTX. Well, there are many organizations in the crypto space, us being an example. We have a banking license and a VASP license. We had a BIT license in the US at one point, which we no longer have. We gave it back. We got out of the US market. But we're very happy to be regulated, and we believe the industry should be regulated. Yes, FTX happened, but well, Lehman's also happened, and we didn't all of a sudden decide that we weren't going to use banks anymore, right? Every industry has bad actors. You learn, you improve, you go for better regulation. So I think that what the US is doing now, which is pretty much just shutting down crypto, is again misguided, because you're going to push the industry somewhere else. And I think within the big banks, in general, it's about stop trying to figure out how you're going to corner this market and industry, and instead start to see it as a different form of innovation that needs to be worked on and supported, because the market share and the slice of the cake gets bigger.
Yeah, that's very wise words. I think the challenge right now is kind of coming back to Xapo banks is, if you look at the adoption of cryptocurrencies, is really, we're talking about 350 million people, which is nothing in the drop of the ocean of adoption of even fintech or products or even social media. There's 4.5 billion people using digital assets and social media. I'm talking digital assets more in the sense of digital technologies every day. Whereas in crypto, we're talking about not even 10% of that. So definitely there's a lot of issues coming back. Of course, like you said, for any innovation, people are afraid of it. Even the internet, okay, everyone talks about the internet right now, but CNN ran, I think it was CNN or one of these publications that ran an article in the beginning of the internet saying that the internet is a fad. So yeah. it
didn't age well, did it?
Yes. So and I think these kind of things are really, they keep on happening. But the challenge here is, of course, this touch money, touch as well the models of centralization versus decentralization. But one of the things you guys are doing is that you actually are bridging these models in a very intelligent way, which is probably one of the few organizations that are doing this. So let's pick your hat as an expert in finance and as well as a standard accountant. How do you see this bridge between the conventional financial world and the most innovative world of digital assets and the cryptocurrencies, and as well organizations hybrid like you? Because I think the challenge is the traditional world has no clue. You guys are much more advanced, but you need both to work together, because you cannot go to the extremes of a lot of people in the crypto world that they want to destroy everything. But if you destroy everything, it's like the French Revolution. You kill some people and they put another ones in the power, you'll get again to the same problem. So how can we get that bridge? Because this can actually make a lot of innovation, could create much more business, and it would save a lot of billions of dollars to entrepreneurs. But in the end, the game is that the ones that control keep controlling, and these divisions don't help anyone. So a bit of your insights and wisdom on that.
Well, I think, having genuine use cases that my mom or your mom could understand is the only way that we can go mainstream, right? Because right now, like you said, 350 million people, growing by the day. But let's face it, a lot of it is around, taking a gamble on the price of some coins going up, right? We have a completely different view. For me, there's a lot of innovation in the crypto space, and then a lot of amazing technology and amazing technologists. But if you think about fundamentally, the best use case in crypto and the most decentralized form of token is Bitcoin. And you can talk about the Bitcoin blockchain, whether it's fast enough, not fast enough, yada yada. But hey, if you focus on improving that technology, then the use case, I think, of Bitcoin is unquestioned. So how do you create use cases for it? Well, for us, like we were saying before, this bridge between a dollar bank account, which is the most desired currency in any emerging market in the world, right? If you're in Nigeria or Brazil or whatever country, even when you land as a foreigner, as a tourist, everybody wants dollars, right? So dollars is the currency of the world, particularly in emerging markets. Why? Because it's much stronger than local currency. So this use case of having in your pocket a bank account that helps you keep dollars and Bitcoin securely, earning you interest in your sleep, right? That in and of itself is the core use case. And then you go, well, how can I use it every day? Well, look, a lot of people aren't using Lightning yet, but what we showed is that, look, we want you to use Lightning to be able to make payments with Bitcoin. But what we also want to do is do it out of your dollar account. So if you don't happen to not have Bitcoin, it doesn't matter. We will convert some of your dollars into Bitcoin so you can still pay with Lightning. So part of our job and our use case is, like you said before, MetaMask and some of this technology is still not within the grasp. The UX is not easy for most people to use. My mum cannot go into MetaMask and open up an account. I struggle, let alone anybody else. So how do you make it easy, right? The UX has to be easy. So how can you bridge the use case? Same with the card, right? Our card is linked to the dollar bank account. But if you don't happen to have dollars, that's okay. We make it easy for you. We convert some of your Bitcoin into dollars. So that's what you're actually spending with your card. So you kind of use very simple ways of bridging the two. And then obviously recently we did stable coins. If you send Tether or USDC to Coinbase or any exchange, then you still have a token at an exchange, right? When you send it to us, well, why did you send us a token? Basically what you want is dollars. So if you want dollars, we will buy that token off you, and we will get the proceeds of that token and put it into a bank account. And then from that perspective, now it's in a real bank account, in a bank, deposit guaranteed earning yield, right? So that alleviates any complexity for you of having to then find a bank that is going to accept a withdrawal from an exchange, which is incredibly difficult to do. Because like you said before, most banks still are not comfortable touching crypto. So that gives you a whole different dynamic of this idea of bridging traditional finance and crypto by proving the use cases and going, this is how you can use it, and look how simple it is to use. So our app and our product doesn't do 50 things. It does one or two things really well. We keep your funds safe. We help you earn yield so that you can earn interest on the money without needing to figure out how to do it yourself. And we make the access to those funds that you have as easy as possible, using all the innovation that we can think of that gets the best out of leveraging blockchain technology. That for me is true innovation. That helps me get up in the morning. That is exciting, and that's something that we want to drive going forward, because we think there's demand for this product, and people that are either in emerging markets, or people who are worried about how to keep their savings protected. But also there's demand for people that are already crypto native, but just struggle with the idea that most banks don't want to touch them, don't want to touch their money, and don't, you know, think, oh, because you've got crypto, there's probably something criminal about what you've been doing, right? Well, we know from all the blockchain monitoring tools that we have that that's not the case, right? And we've been in the industry for long enough that we know how to deal with that. So I think for me, it's that a lot of people that I meet in the crypto space, particularly on the more sort of technology heavy side, it's a lot about sort of future use cases that are then difficult for most average people to experience and realize what that actually looks like. So we've taken that complexity out of it and actually gone and done it in a way that makes it much more easier to engage. And then this idea, like you were saying before, you know, then there's also this hardcore idea of, you know, anti-establishment, no regulation, anonymity. That's never gonna, that's almost borderline anarchy. You know, you're never gonna bridge traditional finance that way. Why? Because, you know, for crypto to go mainstream, we need to figure out how to translate and transform from traditional money and fiat into digital form. And yes, I know that a lot of central banks are thinking about CBDC and everything else, but that's got a long way to go still. And then that doesn't still guarantee that it's going to be in your pocket and you can use it day to day. So that's still very much in the early stages. So I think what Xapo is doing that is super interesting is we are walking down the path of not only showcasing genuine use cases, but we've actually gone and built it, and we can show that they work.
Oh, that's a very important thing, and it's not an easy task. So let's look at your platform. So for people that want to use, so how's it works? And you mentioned a lot of the features, but let's look right now of the nitty-gritty of this, because a lot of these things is about how you actually can solve a couple of solutions and how we can take it to the next level. So one of the things, for instance, at the moment, and I want to start with that, is the challenge that you have definitely right now is that, for instance, at the moment you have, mostly if you are trying to be quite safe, on the safe side, and you're not an expert industry, but even if you are an expert industry, you still need to be on the safe side. So that means you have the likes of Coinbase, Binance, mostly exchanges. And of course, Coinbase is partly regulated in the US as a public company. Binance is a bit more tricky. It has a lot of things. Of course, they're doing a lot of innovation. But when you go then to second tier or third tiers, you have it becomes more tricky to really have some kind of security around these things and to understand how to take it forward. So what would be the advantage for people signing up? Like you said, it's a private bank. And you have a lot of different things. For instance, I'm actually in your website as we speak, just as a note that for my notes, you can buy and store Bitcoin, you can receive money global, you can have a US account, you can protect life savings, use debit card, which is a very big advantage. For instance, Coinbase doesn't have a debit card. So let's go through some of these features. And for instance, can you have multiple currencies, or at the moment you are only have stable coins and Bitcoin? A bit of this kind of nitty-gritty details, top level.
No worries. So at top level, the best way I would explain it is, you know, if you think about, you know, Swiss banks, back in the day, rich people would fly to Switzerland, land, meet a relationship manager for a big private bank, and open up a bank account there physically, right? So we're doing the same thing digitally. We are based and regulated in Gibraltar. So we can't advertise in countries around the world, but if people come to us and apply to open up an account, then we can serve them no problem. So that's why we're a private bank. Anybody can apply. All they've got to do is go to the website and fill out the application form. We ask some basic information about where you live, what you do for a living, your source of income and wealth, of course, for compliance purposes. And then, if you meet the criteria, then we'll send you an invitation and you're on board as a customer. So if you then wanted to fund the account, there's two simple ways to do it. Number one would be to send us some Bitcoin. The other one would be to send us some stable coin, because those are the most common ways that people in the crypto space would be able to do it. In terms of fiat rails, we can do sterling, so faster payments. You can receive and send money. SEPA, euros, we're going to be releasing that within a couple of weeks, so you can send and receive euros. And of course, we also did money in and money out via SWIFT in dollars, but with all the noise around the US, we had to stop that, but we're looking at replacements very, very shortly. But in the meantime, we can still do stable coins. Now, before we were a bank, we were an e-money company. And we had something like 140 currencies that we offered our customers. Of course, we would, segregate the funds, which is what you need to do for e-money. But in terms of, the liabilities of the customer, they could have it in any currency they wanted. And one of the things that we learned is, people would send us money or Bitcoin or whatever. 70% of our customers' funds were kept in US dollars. So what we saw is that, once they joined Xapo, customers didn't want to keep their own local currency. They wanted to have US dollars. So as a result, that's what we do today. This idea of making our product as simple for the customer as possible is when people send us funds, people in the emerging markets, they think in dollars. So as a result, we convert the currencies that they send us into US dollars automatically for them. So if you send us sterling or euros or a stable coin, rather than you having to figure out how to sell that into your dollar account, we do it for you. And why not offer a sterling account or a euro account? Yeah, maybe we could, but like you said yourself before, our use case resonates a lot more in emerging markets, and people in emerging markets don't think in sterling and in euros, they think in US dollars. So those currencies are much more in terms of, well, it increases the usability of the account. You've got a dollar account, but you can still receive euros into it. You can still receive faster payments into it, or you can make payments out of it. So who might that appeal to? Well, we've got a lot of remote workers. Xapo is completely remote. We've got Zapians that work in 50 countries around the world. So, think about that applied to the world post-COVID. There are people all over the world more and more working remotely. So you could have a Xapo bank account and decide that you want to move to Brazil or South Africa because you like the weather or whatever else. And you're working for a fintech based in Berlin that needs to pay you in euros. We would solve that problem for you. You can get paid into euros, but you're still going to receive money into a dollar bank account, which has more value to you if you're in Brazil or Argentina than receiving local currency, where you probably already have a local wallet or a local account to make local payments. You just want to keep some of your earnings in savings, which is the problem that we're trying to solve. So I think, there's a lot of use cases to the account and what we try to do. But applying is easy. You just go to the website, fill out the application form, and we serve the whole world except the US. We used to have a US business, and we felt that that's a very different market, very different value proposition, and that value proposition wouldn't resonate there. So we took a view to close down our US business and focus on emerging markets and the retail space in the rest of the world.
Yeah, fantastic. One of the things that you have, and I want to be conscious of your time, that is quite interesting is the membership. So can you tell us about the membership and how it works?
Sure, but well, look, because we're a private bank, once you apply, you become a member, and the reason for that is, this idea that we're offshore, we need to vet the customers, and being crypto, we want to make sure that we're not, being approached by bad actors. So that's why we have an application form. But most importantly, it's once you're in, like with any private members club, then you're going to get stellar service. So once you remember, you're going to get the best Bitcoin dollar price out there, because being a member means that you've paid a subscription to be a part of this club and part of this private bank. And that means exclusivity. So that means that if you're buying or selling Bitcoin, you can rest assured that we're going to give you the best possible Bitcoin price, or as close to the wholesale price as possible. If you use your card is a metal card. It's a premium card that earns you 1.1%. There are other features that we could offer with it being a premium card, but we felt that what our customers would want the most is this idea of earning as they spend, and those earnings are actually in satoshis. So you're basically, every time you spend, you're earning bitcoins, which again we felt would be something that would resonate as a use case that we were talking about before. You also get a dedicated account manager. So, in a lot of fintechs, it's almost impossible to speak to a human being. We have actually made it a virtue of making sure that we can give you really good service. So we have our headquarters here in Gibraltar. We have amazing offices where we don't expect our customers to fly from all over the world to come and see us, but the fact that it's there is to create this trust that there's a genuine bank with real people and with a genuine headquarters that you can come and visit whenever you want. But also within the app, you can make a booking and talk to your account manager. So there's always somebody that you can reach out to, ask questions, jump on a Zoom call and talk about your finances and your needs. So this idea of being a member is that we wanted to feel aspirational. We wanted to feel exclusive, because being a savings proposition, for the savings proposition to work, earning 4.1% in dollars, earning 1% in Bitcoin, then you need to have an element of wealth in the first place for that interest to compound and for the account to be valuable. That's why we, to be fair to customers, we make sure that we vet them to ensure that this product is going to be suited and useful for them. But once people are vetted and they become members, they can rest assured that they're going to get the best service out there in the crypto space.
Fantastic. So as a wrap up, and we're passing the 1 hour benchmark, I always try to be respectful of your time. So just as someone that is within the industry, so the industry is going through a lot of challenges. We had, of course, recently the earthquake, of course, with what happened in the US, with actually one of the biggest exchanges in the world. And as well, there's a lot of challenge with the US government. I don't think they know what they're doing, but that's another different discussion. But what do you see right now from your experience as probably one of the most mature organizations that has been on this since the hype, and they're going through all the waves of hype and no hype and the crashes, winds of winters and summers and whatever. So how do you see really the things? And I know that you're trying to come up with a lot of practicalities on that level. So just want to understand some of your insights on and wisdom on this.
Yeah, well, I think I have to concur with you. It feels to be misguided. At least the US stance at the moment feels a little bit misguided to me, in terms of driving an industry away that could create the next Silicon Valley. So why you would want to do that, I'm not quite sure, but that's what it feels like right now. But look, I've been through 3 crypto winters. Probably this is my 4th. Wences has been through about 8. And if there's one thing about crypto winters is that they end. So I've got conviction that it's not going to be 6 months, not even a year, but within a couple of years we'll see the next wave coming along. And for us to get there, it's just going to take a little bit of compounding of positive news, positive advancements, little by little. You know, it's not going to be one big thing, but there's going to be quite a few things that will compound. And then we'll be like, okay, this is the next sort of stage of where this industry will get to. And I think you kind of alluded to this before, you know, a lot of the big financial institutions and even the government were in the past where, you know, no crypto, no chance, you know, that's all for criminals, yada, yada. I think that's changed. You know, a lot of central banks are looking at central bank issued tokens and coins. I think a lot of the big financial institutions are thinking about, you know, building digital asset teams, are thinking about use cases. And I think at some point, they will have to figure out how to merge that with some of the existing market participants. Because if you're an amazing token blockchain engineer, you don't want to go and work for JP Morgan, right? In fact, they probably couldn't think of a worse place to go and work. So from that perspective, no disrespect to JP Morgan, it was just to make a point. So I think, you know, how do you bridge that gap? You know, how are you going to innovate if the people who have the know-how in the industry see you as the enemy? That's just not going to work. And how is the crypto space going to develop if they see financial institutions as the enemy? So the two camps can't keep on seeing each other as the enemy. There's got to be a symbiotic relationship there that needs to be win-win. And then if you think about the regulatory space, if the US doesn't want to regulate it, that's fine, but somebody else will. You know, if you think about Bitcoin in particular, the fact that no government can control it is probably its main appeal. So if you're trying to say, well, we'll either block it completely or regulate it to the point where nobody can use it, I can just take my Bitcoin and take them somewhere else. I don't need the US. Right? All you need is a touch point into how can I use it? And there are other providers, other countries, other currencies. So I think the industry always figures out a way. There are more and more actors within the space that realize that, you know, regulation is the way forward. We were one of the early incumbents and drove a lot of the need for that regulation, but it's good to see that others are now on that camp. We're not alone. And I also see that some of the big financial institutions realizing that there is an opportunity here and they need to reach out and work together. So I'm seeing the grassroots of that. Is that going to bear fruit in the next 6 months? No, it's going to take a couple of years, but I think the next Bitcoin wave and the next crypto wave, when it happens, will be the most definitive one we've seen so far by a long way.
So very positive, and I think it's a great way to look at the industry with wisdom, and especially with I think maturity. I think that's one of the things that you guys have, this maturity we need in the industry. I think it's already 10 years of cryptocurrencies mainstream, at least in the media, although the last 5 years probably more mainstream in terms of noise and PR and so forth. So one last question. So from people all over the world that listen to us, and I know that most of my audience is completely blockchain centric and very passionate about blockchain and crypto, but what would be the advice you give for people? And you touch a lot of important things in terms of wisdom, but the advice for people, especially dealing with all these waves of volatility, because what I like about you guys is the stability, but in the end of the day, there's a sense of wisdom. You come from a very strong financial background, and you're right now in the innovation of this, and you are as well working in an app that works pretty well, and a platform that is very straightforward, directly to the point. So a bit of wisdom that you would suggest to our audience, especially from your experience as well.
Yeah, sure. I think, you know, if you step back from just crypto and just think about wealth generation in general, right? You know, you start investing at a young age, you put a little bit of money aside, make sure that it compounds. That's basic principle of investing and wealth generation. The other one is being well diversified. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You make sure that you're well diversified in terms of how you invest. And the other one is, of course, that you don't just think short term. You've got to think medium and long term. So if you apply those principles, that's why what we're building is really a way of allowing you to do all those things within Xapo. So that's why we want to think about ourselves as a savings proposition. How can we help you grow your wealth? And doing it in the same way where you can follow those tenets and those principles. It just so happens that a big component of how you might decide to do that is through crypto. But when it comes to our product, you've got the savings account. You can earn interest on that. You got the fact that you've got dollars or Bitcoin, which in and of itself is either a store of value or the world's main currency, which is going to be helpful. But we're building more product where you can sort of diversify and also have other forms of investment. So those are things that we're building into our product, and will be the next phase of innovation that you'll see hopefully very soon, that we will be launching in the next few months. And then what we encourage people to do is, we would never encourage anybody to remortgage the house and buy Bitcoin, right? But we just think that if you think about medium long term as a basic principle of investing, not having a small allocation of your portfolio to Bitcoin would almost be just as unwise, because the downside compared to the upside is quite limited. So if you're well diversified in how you think about investing, you're thinking about medium long term, you're thinking about that wealth generation, it's a very different mindset, right? What I see a lot in the crypto space is, how can I make a quick buck? What's the latest coin? I'm going to buy. I'm going to look at the price volatility. I'm going to become a day trader, right? I've been in financial services for 30 years, and one of my first jobs was to work very closely with the trading desk and monitor and value the trading portfolios and positions. Even professional traders that have been doing it for decades lose money. So I think the fact that people come along into crypto and start day trading and think that they're going to be rich overnight, I would very much caution against that. So I think for me, I'm walking that rope of what I believe in, which is the principles of investing are quite sort of clear and traditional and old-fashioned, but they work for a reason. Otherwise ask Warren Buffett, right? And I think from that perspective, it's like, well, how can you build a portfolio that has a little bit of allocation of Bitcoin, savings, and other asset classes that help you diversify? That's the direction of travel that we're going in. That's what we think makes sense, as opposed to this idea of day gambling on price of tokens and hoping that you're making a quick buck. I think that's misguided.
Wise words. Thank you so much. I think there's a lot of more questions, but I think for the first one, I'm definitely probably one thing that would be interesting is one of the things I want to do is a series of I think one of the things that is missing a lot is this kind of education, down to earth approach, because a lot of things is about, okay, let's make millions. And let's start by, first of all, having some wisdom and understanding how things work, and go through this kind of thing. So congratulations for all the work you guys have been doing.
Thank you very
I know
much.
that it's not easy. So
my hair's gone very gray and I've got none of it left, but it's certainly not been easy, but it's certainly challenging, but it's incredibly rewarding. I truly believe in what we're doing. I think we're innovating in a way that, I'm not going to lie, it is grating, right? Because being first in a lot of things is always hard work. Being the first bank, we were the first principal member of MasterCard and Visa. We started their crypto program. So we were the first at the door, hacking away, showing them what good compliance looks like in blockchain technology. We were the first bank. So imagine how hard it was to get the license, right? We were the first to get Swift rails and get correspondent banking relationships for dollars in this space. We were the first ones to open up relationships with people who are now some of the key players in the industry in terms of making payment transactions. We were the first custodian. right, that had the largest amount of Bitcoin in our vaults. We had 900,000 Bitcoins in our vaults at one stage. So being the first sometimes can be grating, hard work, and you don't always get it right. But you know, the rewards once you get there are very high.
No, and you guys achieve it. I think in a lot of ways, just the fact that you guys are discreetly keep growing as a maturity bank, just the fact that you are a bank, it's quite an impressive one. And I know that the industry needs much more case studies like this, but as well the wisdom of keep going. I think the waves are great if you're a surfer. I think on business and special and finance, it's good to have some emotions, but not too much. But I think the industry needs to mature on that.
Well, that's I think where we are today. That's a great way to finish, I think, Dinis, which is, you know, I always say to the troops that, you know, if you surf, you always got to make sure that you're ready for the next wave, because if you're not ready, it catches you sideways and you fall over, right? So that's what I think the industry needs to be doing now, right? You know, how can the industry be getting ready? Make sure that the surfboard is pointing to shore and aligned so that when the next big wave comes, we're ready to ride it. And I think that to do that, there needs to be an acknowledgement of how do we change some of the past behaviors, but how can we also bring regulators and more of the traditional financial institutions to the table? Because it has to be win-win for all three parties. It doesn't work if you just want to go and do it on your own.
I completely, and that's probably the biggest opportunity that we have on this level. I think it's the opportunity and challenge, but it's how we can take it forward.
Absolutely.
No, fantastic. Well, I'm sure I will push you probably for a second one more about the industry and so
Whenever
forth.
you want.
Great stuff, and thank you so much for all these insights, and as well a lot of I didn't go too much on the technical details because I want my audience to understand first the things, but we sometimes go a bit more technical. But a really impressive work you guys have been doing, and I think for people listening to us, we'll put all the links and all the different. This is not the sponsored content, but it's actually a privilege to be working with you guys, or at least to interview here. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. It's been great being here. Thank you.
I think the team.
I think they're falling asleep. They're falling asleep.
Yeah, no.
They got bored.
No, yeah. Actually, Philippi had the host rights. I am texting him now.
No worries.
Yeah, no worries. So we'll take it in the editing part. So thank you so much, Seamus. I have one of the things I would love to do with you, and that's what we've been approached by a lot of people, but it's really I've been as someone that is an influencer in this area. I'm sometimes a bit cautious, and actually I reverse engineer my profile as a crypto influencer to become much more blockchain and fintech, because it can get very dangerous, as you know, and especially if you want to do, like you said, I've been working with MasterCard. I'm working right now with USAID. And one of the challenges I always find, okay, what can we do to avoid any, like I said, the wrong things and focus on the positive things? And what you guys doing is how we can create a lot of education on this area. If it would be any way you guys want to work in a series about education around these areas, is one thing I want to bring. And I want as well we're going to list you guys. So part of these interviews, we list you as well on the Open Business Council platform. So Open Business Council is becoming quite mature right now as a platform. Is actually becoming one of the biggest business platforms in the world. And I'm saying this with numbers. We have mostly I created we actually every at the moment we're working actually with the blockchain certification. So that in the end of the day is a kind of a directory integrating a search engine and different parts, and we're listing. So it works like a directory and search engine with the blockchain certification for every entry, but then there's a marketplace. So it's a Wikipedia, LinkedIn with a component of Alibaba, let's put it that way, and Crunchbase. And one of the things I found out is really the lack of education is alarming. Okay, sometimes I want to go more technical, but I start thinking, okay, I have to think. One thing is me excited about this. The other thing is the other people on the other side, and definitely the education is a key element. And the idea, one of the things that I'm particularly interested in is that we are building a VIP business club. And I'm going to give you an example, very personal, and this stays between us. Is, for instance, I'm a client of Coinbase, and at a certain point, I had a huge amount of money in Coinbase, and I still have some money. and the way they've been treating even people like me is completely crazy, because they don't care less. And I can, if I start really using my social media capacity, I can destroy a brand. Of course, I will never do that. But in the sense is that the lack of attention to the people, it's alarming. And this actually, for instance, I've been advising big banks. This happens wherever it is big banks, whatever it is. There's an alarming lack of relationships. The membership part for me is the key element. And one of the things I'm working more and more at right now is creating a club of personalities like me that we are building on the top of what we discussed. Is going to be at the moment. I literally was talking with a prince, and he's a prince, and my network is becoming bigger and bigger. But the point is that there's a paradox, for instance, and for instance, if I look at, for instance, I choose Coinbase due to being a public company because I want a safety. But the way they've been even handling my personal data, the confusion between their different departments gets me crazy. How the hell these guys, I know that they have a lot of clients and I'm just a tiny drop in the ocean, but nevertheless, at least know who are your clients, minimum. And contradictions, I have documents lost. And I was, come on, this is not possible. But it happens with big banks as well. In the UK, I'm based in London, and being Portuguese, I keep my Portuguese passport, but I'm a permanent resident in the UK, and I can get the British passport, but I'm a bit European on that. But it's the kind of things that, okay, it's really, you are forgetting the most important, there are the people, okay? And the technology needs to serve the people. So it's these kind of things that if it's something interesting for you, I would like to. At the moment, we're creating these interviews. I started mostly because of that, because I was in an event in actually was one of the biggest events in the world of crypto, and there were 10,000 people, and the event gave attention to two bloggers. I'm not mentioning names; they're quite famous. They were not famous at the time, but because they had good or big YouTube channels, these guys have no clue. They are kids. Okay, it's good. They're talking about the hype of the crypto, but it's mostly, okay, Lamborghini kind of stuff. Okay, the blockchain, the Bitcoin, Lamborghini. And I was, man, it's much more important to really get the credibility. You can still have the show, and you need the show. And it's really, the challenge right now is that it's kind of, you have really the dual system that is Coinbase or Binance. Binance is not regulated anywhere, which is something that I don't know where they're going, because it's kind of dangerous. If actually, I hope nothing happens, but if it happens, we are all screwed up. And really, this kind of education and engagement is really key. So I'll leave that for you. If it's something that you're interested in, I would like to explore.
It's really interesting, and not only is it interesting, but just, to be perfectly frank, what you've just described is kind of the market segment that we want to go after. Because think about, like you said, the Lamborghini kids, right? Versus, you're a serious guy, you got a bit of money, you want to put it somewhere where you can trust the institution, and you're going to get good service. It's basics, right? Then this is why we created this idea of Xapo being a private bank. We've got a headquarters, you get an account manager. So nothing hurts me more than when I get bad feedback because maybe somebody from customer support didn't treat the person well or whatever else. For me, it's like we do more than that. You can book on the app, you can book a Zoom call, you can book a meeting, you can come to the office and we will receive you there personally. You try and speak to a human being at Coinbase and walk into the office, good luck, right? So I think
there's no customer service at all.
Zero, right? So it's all technology based, and that's all well and good, but let's face it, even if ChatGPT becomes the next wave of customer support, we want to speak to other humans. We want to know that somebody cares about your money, because we're talking about your money. We're not talking about Instagram or whatever here, right? So that what you just described is very much our reason for being, and that's why we're not an exchange. We're not here for the Lambo kids. We're for people like you. Maybe you've got 5, 10, 20, 100 Bitcoin. I don't know, and I don't care. But the point is that you want to put that money somewhere that's safe, that the company is capitalized. We help you earn interest on it. You can go in and out to your bank account whenever you want. We're going to introduce stock picks soon enough, so you can buy and sell stocks as well, so you can diversify your portfolio. So we're a traditional private bank that allows you to do Bitcoin as well. So from that perspective, that's going to appeal more to you than to the Lambo kids. And people want that good service. And if you value that service, the price of the membership is peanuts compared to the value that you get out of the account.
And that is, and I think this is what the opportunity for a bank like yours to expand worldwide. And I created the bank myself. I helped create Fab Banking in South Africa, not South Africa, in Ghana. Actually, was with Alliance from Malaysia, and I worked with Saxo Bank before. And what I feel is that really at the moment the paradox is that you have super.
You worked at Saxo Bank. I had Lars in my office. A friend introduced him, and he was in Gibraltar, and I brought him to the headquarters, and I cooked him barbecue. So
okay, well, I interviewed Lars a couple of months ago. Yeah,
really?
He was a host, was one of my guests.
Right,
yeah, no, I was actually global digital head for Saxo for 5 years. I actually helped create a lot of things, but it was a long time. It was my only job. I was always an entrepreneur. But what I understood, and then when I created the bank is, for instance, the bank was in 2015, well, when you guys started. And at the time, in Ghana, we were targeting Ghana, Nigeria, and most of Africa, and as well countries around that, and then Malaysia. There was most of the people who were using crypto. This was 2014. So, and they were using it because, of course, if you're in Africa, it's the only stuff that is more or less stable, and that you can actually not lose it or tomorrow destroy completely the value. So this kind of things is really a key element that I think it's underestimated. And the reason I build Open Business Council is precisely to solve the same problem for business. At the moment, if you search for business worldwide, there's no directory for business.
Yeah.
It's impossible. You have to go for like 50 different directions. And sometimes you find that Google even doesn't offer you anything about business. LinkedIn is not really about business, about professionals. And even you can actually create 5 profiles of yourself. And it's really these kind of things that are really a key opportunity that I'm working right now.
All right,
okay.
man. Pleasure
Very
to meet
nice
you.
to meet you.
Take
Cheers.
care.
All the
Bye.
best. Thank you so much.